going to let you in on a secret. And this is actually not a little secret. This is a big secret, and nobody tells you about it because and when you see anybody, just move across the fretboard effortlessly, and he's using arpeggios, he's using scales, and you just wonder how do you do that? And my conclusion was that okay, I have to learn every scale, every arpeggio within those scales, like it has to be like automatic, right, underneath my fingers. But that's not what happens. And I started, on that venture, I started just practicing every scale shape and every scale, and I racked them together, integrating everything in arpeggios. But pretty soon what happened was something that happens to everyone. You start creating paths. You start creating favorite places you want to go all the time on the fretboard. So, for instance, if we take the key of A minor, right, which is all the white keys on the piano, so no sharps and flats. We got an A minor, and it depends on what chord if I'm playing in minor or major, it depends. But I really like the first position shape here. Cage shape, which was the first minor shape or major shape I learned. And I like the arpeggio that goes along with it. Right? I also like the 12th fret because I have my other sweep picking little that I learned very early on. And please go to the website, the blog, and then download the charts for this so you can follow along here. And then, if to be honest, when I really like these two places of phrasing, and then very often when I go back and forth between them, I use my two favorite little 6-note shapes, which is the semitone and the whole tone on 2 strings, and the whole tone and the semitone on 2 strings. And they're connected, so I have like 4-note shapes here. And I just put those down in octaves, and I really like them. Right? So I would play something like... And then I also have a shape for going up here, and but it's like living in a city. You move to a city, and you have the whole map of the city, which is basically the whole scale across the fretboard, right? But then you create little paths. You got the dentist, you got you shop there, and you go there, and pretty soon, even though you don't know the whole map at all, you can navigate the whole city because you have your power paths around the city, right? And every time you want to go somewhere, you basically think about the places you know and where you want to go in relation to that. You don't think about the whole map. You don't have a picture of the whole map in your head. I have a picture of the whole map here, but that doesn't change the fact that if I knew when I started out, if I'd known that the brain was going to do that, create power paths across the fretboard, it's like, if you watch in the forest that the animals created little paths everywhere, instead of just walking in between they follow paths and they create a little path there and a little path there, and then we can navigate, right? This is natural and normal. We create roads to get from A to B, A to C, and yeah. And so this is how the brain works, even the animal brain, right? And you want to do the same thing. And if you know how your brain works and what you're going to end up doing anyway, then why not do it now? And then skip the whole development. I really recommend that you learn all the scale shapes. You use the cage shape, the 3-note per string, or the incredible, effective, time-saving fretboard freedom system, which you'll find on my website. Ta-da! I really recommend that you do that, but you're going to end up using power paths anyway, right? You're going to have favorite places you move and favorite scale arpeggio combinations, all of that. So why not do that right now? And so how do you create a power path? Well, you can take what you know already. Let's keep it really basic. You have the first position blues scale shape down here in the 5th fret, right? So you go, let's say, right? And you also have, some of the 4th position down, right? And you want to connect the two, then you just come up with some, how do you like to move your fingers? You like these little whole tone intervals? I like those very much, right? Then you sit down and draw a path that you can run or go through that connects the two. Please go to the website, look at the chart so you can see this little example here, right? And what happens when you play like this? Right? and people see you flying across the fretboard like that, anyone is going to conclude and believe that you have all the scale shapes, all the arpeggio shapes, whatever tools you're using, you have total control over them. And they're laid out like effortless, right? You can visualize everything, but you might not even be beginning on that level yet, but you have that power path, right? So this is taking the shortcut. You can practice everything else, the scale shapes and the whole map of the city as you create your power paths. If you want to be a taxi driver, right, you want to know the whole map, right? But you're going to have power paths anyway. Even taxi drivers have that, even though they know every single freaking road in the city. They still go of their favorite routes, right? So please do this, and do it now. Don't wait until you have total control over the whole thing. And if you need, a good friend of mine, by the way, a program or a piece of software that can really lay out any scale on the fretboard, I recommend neckdiagrams.com. Neck Diagrams. It has a little tool where you can right-click the fretboard visually, and then you can just select any scale in any key and have it laid out across the fretboard, and then you can create your own little power paths yourself. And the next step is to become so familiar with your power paths, because that's what happens, right? You're so familiar with the different routes in the city. So familiar that it's totally effortless. Totally, right? It's like if you have one scale shape you've been playing forever and you keep returning to it because, the first position blues scale shape just feels so comfortable, right? You know it in your sleep. You can play it without looking. That's the level you want to get to with your power path. So make one power path your most important, and then just keep playing it. Every time you pick up your guitar, every time you practice sequences in that scale, you go through that power path. You don't stop when you know it. Stop when it's effortless, completely effortless, because that's what gives you the freedom. Then the next thing happens, and that is that the number one culprit, the number one trap we fall into is self-doubt when we practice guitar. Even though we are striving for a high level of skill, we don't really believe we can get there, right? But we're willing to try, right? So we try and we practice, but then, occasionally we fall out of it and we get discouraged because it seems impossible. And then the self-doubt creeps in and says, you probably don't got the talent anyway. And that self-doubt is really, it's natural, it's normal. But if you start practicing power paths to the level of total mastery, just imagine you on stage and you're all over the place. You pretty quickly get the identity of the guy who has total scale control, right? You're totally out of the vertical playing mode, right? And you assume that identity. And suddenly self-doubt disappears because you can already do it. So you just expand that. You create new power paths, right? You expand the ones you do use already. You learn the scale shapes even more. And you're kind of cocky about it because, you're building on something amazing already. That is the surefire way of eradicating self-doubt when it comes to scale freedom. So power paths, I hope you're sold now, okay? And if you're not, just try it for just 4 weeks. Play that every single day. Become really familiar with it, and then see your fingers just run across the fretboard. So how do you create them? We already talked a little bit about that. You take your favorite scale shapes, whatever you have, and then connect them. Use neck diagrams if possible. Or if you have the knowledge of it already, sit down with a piece of paper, draw them out, put them on the wall so you can't forget to practice. And then make sure you don't stop when you're good at it, that you really go for total mastery. In my bundle that we have out right now, the Fusion Flamenco bundle, I've added a whole program on this where we have, pretty large power paths with improv licks within them. And you can, know more about that by watching the video on the page. We also have a link below here. And in the actual Fusion Flamenco program, we take little power paths and we create really cool little melodic licks that you can learn within them. And pretty soon, when you start thinking like that, when you start practicing all these, your brain will just look for these paths everywhere, and you'll develop your scale, navigational abilities faster than you thought possible, I promise you, because this is the way the brain works already. This is what it does all the time. So work with it instead of against it.